So, what do you do?
What do you do? Seems like an innocent question, or innocent enough, doesn't it? Sometimes. But these days, I am starting to not like that question because in these days and times that we live in right now, that question can be aggressive. It can even be offensive. The times that I've had the opportunity to ask someone that question, I don't. I don't ask anybody that question anymore because inside I'm saying to myself, it's none of my business. If they want to offer it up as to what they do, that's fine. But I'm not going to sit there and try and pry and get into their business because it's none of my business. But people ask that question. They still, these days, ask that question. And it can be a offensive question or awkward question. Now, when I was growing up, I had a false friend of mine, a buddy that lived up the street, or about a block and a half up the street from where I was. And he was one of the rich kids in the rich neighborhood. And his dad never worked. His mom or dad never worked. And, all the times I would go over to his house, they were always there. They were always just sitting around complaining about how bad things are and how the world was going into a toilet hole and all this. Always complaining about everything. They were real kind of cynical people. And I used to ask him, I used to say, hey, what does your dad do? And he wouldn't tell me. Even he wouldn't tell me. He would say, I don't know. He just goes out to the mailbox and collects his money all the time. I don't really know what he does. And one day he said, I would keep on bugging him because it just seemed like they had it made. They had this big, huge house up on the top of the hill where they could overlook the city scape. And it just boggled my mind that neither one of them worked ever. And so I'd keep asking him, every once in a while I'd ask him, come on, tell me what your dad does. And he would tell me, he would say, I don't really know. And his dad had a room with a pool table in it where he played pool and he shot pool. And he told me one day, he said, I don't really know. He said he has these guys come over to their house every once in a while and they shoot pool together and they make business deals back there. They smoke their cigars and they make business deals, but I don't know what they're doing. And for the life of me, I never figured out exactly what this guy did for a living, but it just bugged the heck out of me when I was growing up. And so I learned that after a while, I just gave up. I just figured, he must be part of the mob or something. I don't know what he's doing up there. But years and years later, after the internet came about and Google, that's when I one day decided to get nosy. And so I Googled him and Googled the tax records and everything. And what I found out was his mom, his mother, owned downtown properties. And when I looked up those properties, one of them was one of the downtown skyscrapers. The other one was a bank. And I thought, no wonder. And this guy, he kept it a secret all his life, all my life. And when he passed away, that's when I got curious enough to go on the internet, because when he passed away at the age of 68, most of the time the obituaries here tell what people did for a living and told about who they're survived by and what their life was like. His said none of that. On when I was hoping it would say what he listed for his occupation, but it didn't. It just said he was in private investments. I'm like, you son of a, even after he went to his grave, I couldn't find out what he did. But it all kind of fell into place because their house, when they had it built way up on this hillside, and the backyard and the back porch faced downtown. And that kind of, light bulb moment, I'm like, oh, that's why they lived there. So they could sit out on their back porch and drink their coffee and look at their cash cow that was 15 miles away. And he never worked. He never worked a day in his life. And I found out from my parents that they knew him. They said they knew him from college, and they knew him as being married to someone else. So he divorced his first wife and married this woman for the money. I'm convinced of it, because it was her that owned everything. It was in her name. Everything was in her name. Maybe that was to shelter him from something. I don't know, but it just was always a mystery to me. But today, when people ask you that question, people sometimes here and there ask me that question, and I am very uncomfortable with it. I don't want to answer it. I try to deflect it as much as I can. And at first, when I retired, I thought, well, I've got an excuse. All I have to tell them is I'm retired. But then you tell them that, and the next question is, you know what it is? Well, what did you used to do? And I just don't want to answer most of the time. I feel like it's a prying kind of personal thing with everybody, but people ask me, and I just tell them I was in, I did a little bit of this and a little bit of that, whatever song, whoever sang that song, little bit of this, little bit of that. I just try to deflect it as much as I can. And if they keep being aggressive with me and push the issue, I just look at them and softly say, I'm just not comfortable saying that, talking about that. Would you mind if we change the subject? Because I'm just not comfortable talking about that right now. And if they say, yeah, that's cool, it's okay, Usually most of the time they'll say something like that. But I have actually seen fights break out on the golf course over that question. I have seen people get in kind of arguments, and these days, it can be an aggressive question. Now, depending on your situation and what the venue is, it could be an innocent question. I mean, a lot of times when you're starting to date someone and she asks you, what do you do? That's just kind of an innocent question. But it also can be people judge you by that question. They judge you by your monetary status. They judge you by your social status. It's a way of them measuring you up to see if you fit in their circle. Now, it can be a social judgment question because they could be asking it to see if you fit into their clique or not, if you're in their stratosphere or not. And a lot of times guys will ask that question of you, looking to see if you're in their monetary level, so to speak. They're sizing you up, in other words, by that question. And it makes me very uncomfortable. And I try to deflect it as much as I can. Most of the time these days, I just tell people I'm retired. And if they keep pushing the issue, I just tell them I don't feel comfortable talking about that. I'd rather not. And I leave it at that. And if you are amongst friends or people you feel like you can let your guard down and trust, if you're in that situation, then you can tell them. But most of the time, I would recommend not telling people anything, because they're trying to judge you and size you up, and it's just not a fair question. Now, with an employer, or you're on a job interview, that's different. But I just prefer not to say. And when you don't tell people what you do, if you leave it a mystery, they assume you have money. They assume that you are wealthy. I've seen that. And I just let them think that. You let them think that. Just let them think what they're going to think, because it's not a question that I feel comfortable with anymore. I mean, it used to be when I was growing up, it felt like it was just an innocent question in passing. Well, what do you do? Oh, I do this, and blah blah blah. What do you do? Oh, I'm into chemical engineering or whatever. That's innocent enough, but these days it's gotten to be an aggressive question. And unless you're on a job interview or you're with people that you trust, that you know well enough that you can trust, you might say something. But otherwise, I would do your best to deflect that question, because with all the internet stuff these days and scammers and people, you don't know who's doing what behind the scenes, and you don't know who you can trust. So when that question comes up, do your best to deflect it. That's how I feel about it. That's all I've got today. I just wanted to mention that because it seems like it's been coming up a lot for me lately. And I don't know if it's coming up for you or not, but I would deflect it and do the best you can with what you've got wherever you're at. And I will see you guys on the next one.